Colleagues in gallery, please be upstanding. Never let us forget we're forever in the holy presence of God. Almighty God, we ask you give us wisdom in the decisions we make here today and give us guidance in working with our regional communities to promote their social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. First item on the agenda is apologies. We have no apologies, but we have three councillors on Zoom. We have Councillor Te Taru White, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Eatey. We now enter the public forum, and in entering the public forum, we have several speakers today. So the first speaker will be Rohan Wells, and Rohan is associated with a group led, I think, by Tracy McLeod. Rohan.
Good morning, councillors, and good morning all. I'm Rohan Wells, a retired NIWA scientist. I've worked on all the Te Awa lakes and assessed the health of Lake Tarawera for the Ministry for the Environment and Regional Council over the decades. In 2006, Professor David Hamilton, funded by the Regional Council, identified and quantified sources of nutrients entering Lake Tarawera. The two major nutrients that determine lake water quality are nitrogen and phosphorus. In 2012, when the sewage scheme was proposed to the ratepayers, I found it incredulous that the Regional Council posted that sewage contributed 8% of the nitrogen and 10% of the phosphorus flowing into the lake, while our own funded university research showed the contribution was more than 10 times less than that. Professor Hamilton's figures for nitrogen were 1 tonne in the sewage compared to a total inflow of 50 tonnes, but as stated, that excluded geothermal inputs, and only a third of the sewage nitrogen reaches the lake because of soil retention. So the figure's less than 300 kgs of nitrogen, or less than 0.6%. As for phosphorus, it's a much lower percentage, and soil retention is much higher. I raised it with Professor Hamilton, also pointing out that nutrient targets set by the Regional Council were grossly unachievable. I asked him, was I missing something? His response in writing, Rowan, you haven't missed a thing at all, quite the reverse and very perceptive of you. He also wrote, it's all a little strange and I believe they are reworking the figures. Following this, NIWA management informed me that Regional Council wanted me silenced, and I was told not to make further comment as Regional Council were a major client. Regarding sewage and human health, fecal coliforms are the indicator and they show the lake's good for swimming on a par with the Blue Lake. Fecal coliforms are unacceptable in drinking water, but as for all the lakes, wildfowl are a significant uncontrollable source. In reality, don't expect to see an improvement in water quality as a result of sewage reticulation. And where's the cost benefit analysis? Today it's 32.3 million to save less than 300 kilograms of nitrogen and virtually no reduction in phosphorus reaching the lake. That's $1 million per 10 kgs of nitrogen when farmers are buying it from Ravensdown for $1 a kg, spreading it on their farms at up to 150 kgs per hectare. There's nearly 2,000 hectares of pasture in the Tarawera catchment, and it leaches it up to 100 kgs per hectare under high rainfall or irrigation. Most residents supported the sewage scheme in 2012 as they were misinformed by the Regional Council that the lake had badly deteriorated. It wasn't until 2019 that the university discovered that the Regional Council nitrogen analyses pre-2009 and the phosphorus analyses post-2010 were unsuitable for calculating the water quality of Lake Tarawera due to poor analytical techniques used by council staff. The memo also recommended reassessing the nutrient targets and a revised action plan for the lake. I haven't seen that. So the alarm raised due to poor water quality analyses was a false alarm, but Regional Council still outlawed septic tanks, claiming our sewage was a significant source of pollution, and the reticulation option was supported by the community as they were led to believe it would make a difference. There are many statements by the Regional Council and Lakes Council that sewage scheme remains an imperative to save the lake from deteriorating water quality. And this information is still put out there and often repeated, such as even in the recent Lake Rotokakahi Environment Court decision. So I've been quoting figures that are peer-reviewed, published research by top New Zealand scientists. Your council's imposing a huge white elephant on us with a narrative that we are polluters and a threat to the lake, and so leaving us to pay. But that narrative's false, and Tarawera ratepayers should not be burdened with a crippling financial cost. Also, the lake attracts many visitors from the wider region. The 215 Tarawera Restoration Plan compares residents and visitors' average daily contribution to sewage. Residents 291 versus visitors 484. Isn't that a good reason on the basis of user pays while regional rates should help pay significantly more towards the scheme? I thank you for your attention and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. Councillors, any questions of clarification? Appears not, Mr. Dorr. Could I just conclude by saying, Wells, sorry, Mr. Wells, could I just conclude by saying that the Regional Council is the recipient of science data, and you've put one interpretation on that, but we endeavour to make decisions based around the best data that we can, and science has a responsibility to make a considered presentation to the council so councillors can make those decisions. So, but anyway, thanks for your contribution, much appreciated. Thank you. Do we have a Mr. Owen Dorr? No? Oh, we've got Tracy McLeod. Are you covering what Owen Dorr was going to say as well, Tracy? Thank you.
Three Lake Tara residents would like to share their stories. First story from Keith. I am familiar with local residents in my area and assure you that most don't have any additional income, have a subsistent living on government superannuation, a community vegetable garden, and an odd fish out of the lake that we share around. The proposed cost of the sewage scheme is causing undue stress to residents, saying, what the hell are we going to do? We live in a comfortable house built by our grandparents and may have to leave and lose our lives. We pay rates, personally currently $12,000 per annum, and get nothing in return that residents in city areas enjoy, i.e. no rubbish collection, water supply, stormwater, footpaths, street lighting, etc. We have a very strong family tradition with our grandparents being involved in this area since 1900. Yes, my grandfather fought at Gallipoli and the Somme, representing New Zealand, and after being wounded on 3 separate occasions, returned to New Zealand and bought a property at Tarawera. When he passed on, the will stated the property was to never be sold for any reason and was to remain in the family to enjoy forever. My parents have enjoyed that privilege of enjoying their whole lives at Tarawera, which forms a proud family history. How the hell am I going to explain to my grandchildren that we may have to break the family conditions of Grandpa's will because we will not be able to afford to live here anymore, caused through the council's new regulations concerning paying for compulsory sewerage? The second story is from Owen and Margaret. They can't be here with us today as Owen has been in and out of hospital with high blood pressure, 209/100. When I asked him what he thought was causing the high blood pressure, he said, I've been worrying about the sewage scheme. We started the Tarawera Community Garden, Tarawera FM, a small low-power community radio station. I've been active in maintaining the Tarawera Cooperative Water Supply and am also on the Tarawera Community Hall Committee. The 2008 financial crash brought us to financial ruin. We scraped out with enough money to freehold our tiny 1-bedroom Tarawera property. After going through a mental breakdown, it was at Lake Tarawera, our batch and our home for 43 years, we thought we could live our lives out stress-free and at peace. The idea has been totally shattered by an unimaginable, poorly financed, corrupt sewage scheme run and organised by councils who laid on us the responsibility to be sole maintainers of a large lake, the jewel in the crown of a major tourist area. Superannuation has been our only income since 2008. We simply can't afford it. Judging by the actions of Mr. Stavros Michael, Lake Tarawera Residents Association and others, the lake appears to be far more important than the people who live on its shores. Incompetent local government failed to even call tenders for the project and are now about to happily financially rape and pillage those young families, the sick and the elderly. Third story is from Monty. As a long-standing resident of Tarawera and a pensioner on a fixed income, the prospect of paying for the sewage scheme on top of my already large rates bill will place me under immense financial and emotional strain. It has always been said by councils past and present, if you can afford to buy at Lake Tarawera, then you can afford anything. This is so wrong, particularly considering the amount of time that our family has had property at Tarawera. Many of us, like me, are not wealthy holiday homemakers. We are retirees, widows, young families, and people on modest incomes who live here full time. My family has lived at the Lake Tarawera since 1950 and contributed rates for over 75 years. Now I am being pushed to the edge. I never imagined that after a lifetime of contributions, I would be forced to consider selling my home. Due to the uncertainty around the final cost, I have been left in a constant state of financial limbo. I am reluctant to spend money even on my grandchildren, let alone essential maintenance on my home. It is difficult to genuinely commit to anything when the looming cost, possibly $50,000 or more, remains undefined. The stress has been and continues to be unbearable. The prospect of paying for the sewage scheme on top of my existing rates bill will force me to cash in my KiwiSaver. These were funds I had carefully saved and earmarked to visit my grandchildren. That time, those memories can never be reclaimed. Please consider the human cost of this sewage scheme. We are not numbers on a spreadsheet. We are residents, ratepayers, and families trying to stay in the home we love. We deserve councils that work with us, not ones that drive us away.
Finished? Right.
That was a story from the three residents that they wanted me to pass on, and that was part of their submissions that they have put into the Rotorua Lakes Council annual plan.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Councillors, any questions of clarification? If not, thank you, Tracy. Thank your colleagues in their absenteeism, and you're quite welcome to stay to hear the following presentation from RLC.
All right,
if you
I've
wish.
also got my presentation to do as well.
Okay, will you get into that now?
Yeah,
please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all here today. When the Lake Tarawera ratepayer capital cost contribution started escalating from $14,000 to over $50,000, there was a state of anxiety building up amongst the Lake Tarawera community. Questions were raised. Can we get any funding from the Lakes Protection and Restoration Action Program? No. Lake Tarawera is not a priority lake, so it is not eligible for any deed funding. And besides, there is no more funding left in that program. $144.2 million is a lot of money. Surely it can't all be spent. So I started to undertake some research. Prime Minister Alan Clark's major funding announcement speech on the 27th of March 2008 offered some direction. 72.1 or 50% to be funded by the Crown, with the other 72.1 or 50% funded by two councils from their long-term community consultation plans. The key component at the top of the list, construction or extension of sewage works to pick up waste from unsewered lakeside communities around Lakes Rotorua, Rotowiti and Okaraka. I then got a copy of all the last 15 years Rotorua Te Arawa Lakes annual reports and started going through them and constructed a spreadsheet. I wrote a letter to the Ministry for Environment, to which they confirmed they had only paid $55.007 million. So I was surprised that there was still $17,543.82 funds to be paid, which I calculated if matched by the two councils, there could potentially be $34.135 million in funding left. From local government official information and Meeting Act requests, Rotorua Lakes Council reported the sewage schemes for the priority lakes as costing $98 million with Crown funding of $42.5 million. The workshop meeting on the 12th of March 2025 between Rotorua District Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council resulted in Bay of Plenty Regional Council Chief Executive Fiona McTavish stating that the Regional Council does not fund surge schemes. However, Bay of Plenty Regional Council has funded a total of $17.2 million towards surge schemes in the Bay of Plenty area. $1.2 million for Te Puna West, $618,000 to Ongari Point, $3.1 million to Makatu Little Waihi, $11.52 to Lake Rotoiti Rotomar, and $750,000 to Lake Tarawera. Coincidentally, 17.1 is left to be paid by Bay of Plenty Regional Council in the interventions in the new funding deed. Also, coincidentally, 12 million land incentives and 5.5 of non-deed expenses add up to 17.5, less the 0.3 discrepancy also totals 17.2 million. By Bay of Plenty Regional Council contributing 17.2 towards surge schemes, it was a way of repaying expenses that shouldn't have been deducted from the Lakes program. But there's more. There appear to be discrepancies between the Rotorua Te Aroha Lakes Strategy Group annual reports and information obtained from Local Government Official Information Act requests. The total expenses in the Rotorua Te Aroha Lakes Strategy Group annual reports for catchment expenses were $40.55 million. However, the Ministry for Environment only contributed $12.5 million towards those catchment expenses. If it was their 50% share towards the catchment expenses, then the total would be 25 million, not 40.55 million. That leaves a discrepancy of 15.55 million. Coincidentally, 15.55 million is the same amount as the engineering interventions in the new 2025 funding deed to be paid. When added with land incentives of 18.16 million and the 25 million discrepancy in catchment expenses, it totals 58.71, which leaves just over 1 million. Another coincidence is the Lake Rotoiti incentive scheme policy of 45.5 million. The Ministry for Environment contributions left a discrepancy of 15.55 million. If you add Ministry for Environment's 10 million extra contribution to the Rotoiti Rotomar Sewerage Scheme, RDC's 10 million contribution to catchment expenses, and the Lakes Enhancement of 10 million, it totals the same as the Lake Rotorua incentive schemes. If Lake Rotoiti and Lake Tarawera ratepayers contributed to the surge schemes, it would total 55 million, less the Lakes Rotorua incentive schemes of 45.5 million, leaves a discrepancy of 9.5 million, which is why Ministry for Environment paid 10.975 recently. Essentially, the councils made it look like they contributed 55 million each instead of 36.05 each, and were going to get the ratepayers to contribute 55 million, including Lake Rotoiti, Rotomar and Lake Tarawera, as well as 4.46 from the Ministry of Health and 6.5 and 10.975 from the Ministry for Environment. It appears that RDC has overinflated the costs of the surge schemes by 33 million and not declared Lakeside ratepayers contributions of 55 million, and Bay of Plenty Regional Council has overinflated the catchment expenses by 58.71 million. The Lakes program has received around 190 million in funding instead of 144.2 million. The good news is the Lake Rotoiti and Lake Tarawera ratepayers don't need to pay anything towards the surge schemes. Numbers tell a story, and this is only a small part of the story due to time constraints, which forms part of the evidence, which, by the way, is no coincidence. More may be revealed with the quantity survey for the Lake Rotoiti Rotomar Sewerage Scheme and the independent financial audit of Lake Tarawera Sewerage Scheme due in June. My advice to both councils is to address the discrepancies and balance the books now, and stop robbing Peter to pay Paul, and especially stop robbing us all. A full inquiry into the Rotorua Lakes Protection and Restoration Action Program, including a full independent audit, including the sewerage schemes and catchment expenses and Lake Incentive Program, is warranted.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Councillors, any questions of clarification? If not, could I thank you, Tracy? Obviously put a lot of work into that.
6 months worth, by the way.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, can we seek a copy? Ask the presenters to share their presentations with us, please.
Tracy, did you hear the comment from Councillor Thurston, are you able to leave your speaking notes for reference for the executive and councillors? Okay,
Or just email them to us later, Tracy. Thanks.
okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is items not on the agenda. There are none to be added. Order of business, there are no changes. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Next speaker in the public forum is Duncan Evans. Duncan? So Duncan is from the Lake Tarrawera Sewerage Working Group. With him is Sir Henry van der Hayden, and Michael Allen is here also. He is the chair of Lake Tarrawera Ratepayers Association. Could I just start by saying, Michael, that we all enjoy reading The Phantom.
I'm learning about local politics, and I've had a number of complaints because we dropped the brand The Phantom.
Sorry.
But I keep going back and saying I think the content was good.
Okay. Right, who's leading out?
If it's okay, I'll speak on behalf of all three. We've combined our presentation. Just to introduce Duncan Evans, who chairs the working group, who is the executive responsible for the working group, Sir Henry van der Hayden, who chairs the working group, and myself, who chairs the Ratepayers Association. Marina, chairman and councillors and executives, thank you for listening to us. You can see from earlier presentations, feelings at the lake are pretty high. I'm here really to talk today in support of a presentation that is being made to you by Rotorua Lakes later in the meeting. I'm not going to talk in any detail, certainly not the detail we've just had. I'm going to be very quick and just provide you with context, which hopefully will help with decisions. The scheme arose in response to BOP Regional Council's rule changes around septic tanks. Subsequently, it was discovered roughly a third of the houses in our community are unable to manage their own wastewater for scale of property and geography. In other words, on-site was deemed not to be an option. We would argue that there's an element of that that is a mistake of planning, and there is an element of that that is a community benefit if it gets resolved. Following that determination by Bay of Plenty Regional Council, there was a formal strategy group formed represented by TOLT, BOP Regional Council, Rotorua Lakes Council and the Lake Tarrawera Ratepayers Association. And it ultimately, as you're aware, recommended a reticulated scheme, but notably conditional on funding being available. That was the clear recommendation. Reticulated scheme if funding's available. The previous Rotorua Lakes Council pushed the button on the scheme unfunded, and the current Rotorua Lakes Council has been left to pick up that, which I see as a problem. The way the current proposal is structured, I just will give you a breakdown of proposed contributions. Government has given 6.5, which is 20% of the scheme. Better Off Funding has contributed 6%, Rotorua Lakes 4%, Bay of Plenty Regional Council 2.3%, with a proposal that Lake Tarrawera ratepayers pay 67.7%. That's important, I think, for you as a group to focus on, because that is, in my understanding, well above other supported schemes in the region. In considering its support of financing, providing financial support to the scheme, I'd ask Bay of Plenty, in general, Tarrawera residents support the scheme, and we want to be part of a community solution, notwithstanding that feelings are running high. We have indicated a capacity or a willingness to pay a maximum of 36,600, including GST. This is not the unanimous view of the community, but Sir Henry and I and others have given an undertaking that if we can achieve that goal, maximum 36.6, if we can achieve that goal, we will, we're confident 80% of the community will support it. As said, we're speaking in support of Mayor Tapsell's request for funding support from you. We understand there are several precedents where BOP Regional Council have supported financially by way of grants schemes in the region. And in considering this, we asked Bay of Plenty Regional Council to look to the strong regional and community benefits, which have been touched on earlier in these presentations in terms of their mandate. I did want to just conclude by saying positively, this is the last, we'll all be relieved, this is the last lakeside community reticulated scheme required. There are still a couple required in the Rotorua region, but I'm encouraging Bay of Plenty Regional Council and Rotorua Lakes Council to take some comfort in the fact this is the last one and to look through the immediate proposal to fund at short-term and rates, actually step up from that and give us support in a capital sense. Happy to take any questions if you've got any.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Councillors.
In which case, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sir Henry. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rowan. Right, we'll get back on the agenda items. Agenda item 4, there's no agenda items not on, no items not on the agenda. Order of business, there's no change to the order of business. Declaration of conflict of interest. We have Councillor Crosby and Councillor White in terms.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 10.2 and 10.3 as a director at Quayside, conflict of interest.
Councillor White, thank you.
Yeah, likewise.
Public exclusion, business to be transferred into the open, there is none. That leads us through to presentations. So it's my pleasure to welcome Her Worship Mayor Tapsell, Tanya, and Chief Executive of Rotorua Lakes Council, Andrew Moraes. Could I also acknowledge councillors who are present? So we've got Councillor Colin O'Brien, Councillor Lee, and Councillor Barker, I believe. Councillor Barker's here, I know. Councillor Lee's here as well. Thank you. Your Worship, the floor is yours.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Mai te roto me te hapori me te maunga o Tarawera, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. E mihi au ki tēnei tauranga moana, ki a koutou hoki ngā rangatira o Toi Moana. Good morning, everybody. I just acknowledge that we bring with us not only the mountain and the lake, but the community of Tarawera. And I also acknowledge this beautiful community that you have here in Tauranga, and of course yourselves as the decision makers of Bay of Plenty. It's a pleasure to be joined by my Chief Executive. We also have our General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment, Stavros Michael, and our General Manager of Community and District Development, John Paul Gaston, who will be available to help answer any detailed questions. But as you've heard this morning, this matter is very important to our wider community, region, but also country, given the national significance of Lake Tarawera. This has been a project a few years in the making with quite a lot of consultation, but we are working through it, and most importantly, we're wanting to make sure we can deliver this as affordably as possible for the community and residents of Tarawera. So we do thank them for making themselves available. I do note there is a second matter that we wish to discuss with you in this presentation time, and that's also the opportunity for future focused collaboration to enable growth and development, and that is on the back of our fantastic work together on the future development strategy. But if I can start with the Tarawera sewage scheme, as you know, this is a critical project with joint objectives that we have, most importantly, to improve the lake water quality and protect community health. And we certainly don't underestimate that those are things that we should be focusing on as leaders of our community and region. Reticulation is the most viable intervention to achieve this, and that is also noted in your regional council documents too. For us as Rotorua Lakes Council, on behalf of our ratepayers, what we are seeking from you today to consider is a fair and equal funding grant from Bay of Plenty Regional Council. Now, the three main reasons why we are requesting this is to enable completion of the scheme. Again, we can't underestimate the scheme is of a significant cost, and we need to make sure that people can afford it so we can deliver it. Also to overcome those cost barriers to property owners and the risk to the project of it not being able to be completed. And of course, to deliver it on the shared objectives that we have.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Councillors, you will be familiar with many people requesting additional funds from this council, so we are aware of the challenges when we bring this to you. But what we want to talk about is the current funding split and the current projected cost of the project at $32.3 million. As you can see, MFE has provided $6.5 million towards this project, Bay of Plenty Regional Council $750,000, and Rotorua Lakes Council through a series of measures, $3.535 million. That leaves the remaining cost distributed to the property owners. You've already heard from them. We hear from them frequently as well, and we're here to advocate on their behalf. What I will say is, as a chief executive responsible for delivery, the cost to deliver this project, considering capital cost escalation, are actually well within the estimates provided. And we're on track now to deliver for that cost that is up there, a feat that is significant to be achieved given all the disruptions we've also had.
So the proposed funding model that has, as you've heard, been a clear request from our Tarawera ratepayers is for a cost per property to be lowered to $36,700, which includes GST. This will reduce the contribution of Tarawera ratepayers to 50% of the total costs. Now, this solution and the proposal that we're bringing to you make sure that together we can achieve this outcome if Bay of Plenty Regional Council is willing to contribute an additional $3.5 million. I do thank you for your recent annual plan submission. We did receive that on Monday, which formally noted the suggestion of a $4 million loan. When we've run our numbers, which the Chief Executive will speak to in the next slide, this is the reason why we are coming back with an offer and a request of a $3.5 million grant. But I do note and appreciate the suggestion of a loan. And we are very willing to continue these discussions. This is just an opportunity to put this on the table from ourselves as well. So what this will result in is a 50-50 split for the Tarawera residents that they are seeking, and also make sure that the Rotorua Lakes Council and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council are contributing equal amounts. So we are requesting this contribution as a grant because it has shared objectives, which are importantly improving lake water quality and protecting community health and ensuring that this remains affordable. What I'll do now is just touch on the second topic, and don't worry, we will finish on the solutions of both. But as you know, our joint committee and process to develop the Rotorua's FDS was acknowledged by both iwi and government as one of the best they had seen. And so a joint approach that we can both be exceptionally proud of is something that we're looking for. So we know that it's increasingly important for both councils to work effectively in these areas on growth and development. And this is just a screenshot from our future development strategy, where we expect growth to occur in Rotorua.
Councillors, I was astounded when my staff told me that one of the most important ingredients for success in delivering the future development strategy was the involvement of elected members. You don't often hear that from staff, but they were really pleased with the collaboration and the input and direction that came from elected members of both Rotorua Lakes Council and this council. And therefore, what we're outlining is, whilst at the officer level, we are working together very closely, we would endorse learning from the success we've had in the past and having a joint governance framework to be able to oversee the implementation actions of that future development strategy. That includes items that you see on the screen, modelling and boundary conflicts, making sure we're well aligned on those, and then translating those into integrated stormwater management and water quality plans, and then finally delivering those, converting those into projects, providing both councils with good oversight of effective spend in that area, and therefore delivering results for our community.
And this is an exciting opportunity for us and our community. We know that certainly from the councillors in Western Bay and Tauranga, you are no strangers to the pains of growth, but also to the benefits as well. So we're excited to request also a collaborative approach early on to make sure that we plan well for the growth in Rotorua. So if I can conclude with our solutions for these two items. Firstly is the sewage scheme funding. To achieve that objective, we do need a 50-50 funding split with Tarawera ratepayers. We have heard this clearly through our Rotorua Lakes Council annual plan consultation, and we are very grateful for the community also sharing their views with you today. They have shared their views very consistently over a number of years, and we have appreciated observing you today, listening to those with an open mind. The Regional Council and also the Rotorua Council, we are requesting to equally contribute additional funding needed to reach that 50-50 split, reflecting the shared responsibilities and outcomes of this scheme. And we do ask that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council provide a $3,580,000 grant and recommend this be recovered through an appropriate Bay of Plenty Regional Council rate confirmed during your annual plan deliberations this year. Now, I do note that you aren't going out for consultation. So what I do request is that at some stage, given the significance of this proposal and of course the scheme and the fact that we have been able to come to you in this presentation space, I do request that you consider consulting with your community, not only in Rotorua, but also across the Bay of Plenty, consulting on whether or not you would be willing to provide a grant to us. We have heard very clearly through our long-term plan, annual plan consultations and from the community that they would like this. And what I'm asking you is to please allow the opportunity to consult with them as well, because whether it is a $4 million grant, $4 million loan or a $3.5 million grant, I do think that the community deserves to be heard as well. And to put this into perspective, I'll just get our Chief Executive to explain why we are requesting this funding.
Councillors, as you can see, the current funding split in a visual way, which obviously leaves a significant portion for the residents to bear. What we're proposing would result in this outcome, which, as you can see graphically, reduces the residents' burden to roughly 50% of the scheme and within some of the figures that previous speakers have identified. What I would also say is what I've heard in my time is that uncertainty is really what hurts the community. What we're doing by bringing this forward into this year of our annual plan a year earlier than originally intended is that we can strike a capital rate and give residents certainty so they can go about their life, enjoy the community they live in, enjoy the beautiful environment in which they live, but also give certainty to the rest of the ratepayers about delivery and that it will be done and delivered on time and within the budgets here.
And as you can see from this graph, that would significantly increase the fairness and equality of the funding. But we are also mindful that in this graph, we're trying to simply demonstrate what our community has also asked of us, which is what is the contribution of Regional Council and are they able to provide any more to assist us? So we hope that you will take on board our request for a further discussion, which we look forward to at another time, but also a request to consult the community on this matter at some time in future as well. We do appreciate your timeframes of your annual plan and not being consulted. And then just finally, the Joint Governance Committee to Progress, Growth and Development. This is a joint committee that supports the Rotorua Catchment Operations Group that will ensure that our future development strategy action plan is actually efficiently and effectively progressed. I do know that we've mentioned about having a Joint Governance Committee in the future development strategy, and really we're just seeking that we can start to action that to make sure that we get ahead of the growth that we're already experiencing in Rotorua. And finally, to improve stormwater management, we do need to achieve one catchment management plan as highlighted in the comprehensive stormwater consent and 2019 Ngongotaha flood review recommendations. So we look forward to further discussions on this. Thank you very much for the opportunity this morning to present this information to you, and we will be very happy to answer any questions and also very happy to have another more detailed discussion with you in future. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your agenda today.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you, Andrew. Councillors Patai. So, Andrew, starting at the last one, the Joint Governance Committee, can you just be clear? My understanding is you're requesting a formal position as opposed to informal position, because I'm aware that over the triennium, the 3 elected members from the Rotorua constituency have had probably 3 or 4 times a year informal discussions with your elected members in the green room. You're happy with that process, but you're obviously wanting to have a more formal structure going forward.
Thank you. Perhaps I could answer this one. We have really appreciated the time that the Rotorua councillors have given us to discuss a number of matters and how we could work together. What we are seeking through this is a more formal approach of a governance committee. Our staff often work the staff are the ones that have these discussions and at times also set the direction, if I'm honest. What I'd like to do is make sure that given the significance of development and growth and also our stormwater management, that there could be an opportunity for councillors to also be involved to make sure that the direction is clear and that we are ensuring that the views of our councillors and therefore our communities are being represented. So it's really just ensuring that as well as the current operational frameworks that are in place, we also get an opportunity for elected members to have some leadership in this area too.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Thurston, Crosby, then Nees.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Your Worship, for coming to Tauranga today, and to you too, Andrew. Much appreciated. Can I just say, firstly, to my own colleagues, a very big public thanks to them, because I think apart from the sell down of the Port of Tauranga, I think the biggest issue that's consumed this council politically and down in the Green Room and other forums has been the issue of the Tarawera reticulation saga. So I just wanted to thank my colleagues around the table for their help and support. We three colleagues from Rotorua, we're small in numbers, but we'd like to think we punch above our weight. But we know our role, and we have tried to keep you very closely informed with thinking and what is happening in this neck of the woods. We'd like to think that we work collaboratively with the Rotorua Lakes Council, and I think your suggestions around a future development strategy and a more formalised governance model will go down incredibly well in the next triennium. I am acutely aware that we're effectively at the end of this triennium, so a lot of this will unfold politically in the next triennium. But we've put a number of options and solutions before you, which you described as somewhat unpalatable. I think that's a fair description, the rate swap. I would like to think that the interest-free loan is still something that you're open to, that we presented on a number of occasions in your chamber. But we just want to reiterate again that we work constantly to assist RLC in finding solutions to the challenges that we have back home. So, once again, my sincere thanks to my own colleagues around this table, because I know they tire of the number of times that we three raise this issue and force a debate or a discussion, be it formal or informal. And we are totally committed, I know, the three of us and all my colleagues here, to finding a community solution for regional and lakes benefits. So, but thanks for coming, and thank you to your council colleagues for coming, and likewise the representatives of the ratepayers at Tarawera. It's no easy solution, but I think collectively we'll put our minds together, and if there's a will there, I'm pretty sure we can find a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. Councillor Crosby.
Thank you, Your Worship, and CEO Andrew. Yes, you do have a great future development strategy, and certainly look forward to working with you, for those of us that might survive October in the future. Words are important, so I'm just trying to understand for absolute clarity, because it depends on how we may approach this. Effectively, you'd love a grant, but you're actually asking for a loan to be funded or recovered through some form of rate. So, there's a big difference between a grant and a loan. So I want to be absolutely clear what you're asking for.
Given that I don't need to survive October, councillor, I'll say it's the other way around. We're asking for a grant, but we're willing to discuss a loan. So I believe the offer has been made by this council, and I acknowledge that as a step towards helping, because interest costs are a burden. However, as we've outlined in our presentation, what we're seeking is an ability to mitigate the total capital cost on the residents. Now, our council will consider that through our annual plan process, but what we've heard loud and clear from the residents is they're looking, as this has joint objectives, that there's some joint funding. So ball's in your court. I'm trying to put the ball in your court so that you can let us know what we do through our annual plan consultations.
Away you go, Tanya.
And I do want to thank you for this suggestion of the $4 million loan. We did receive that in your annual plan submission on Monday. Thank you for also sending that to us because we have not yet had an opportunity to see all of the submissions. But again, we will take that on board now that it's formally been made and have that discussion, as we hope that you will also have a discussion about the $3.5 million grant, but importantly, the consultation that you may do with your region too. Thank you.
Councillor Nees.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming across to talk to us today. Firstly, I just want to say I participated in the FDS development and it was an absolute pleasure. And I won't be around after the next election, but I certainly hope that this council considers having a formal committee that will work with you. And when we do our governance review to look at council structure, I certainly hope that the council that's coming in will consider that and put it in our structure. What I would like is just a little bit of clarification on some of your slides, because if you go to that slide that says comparison, and it looks like RLC is contributing a much larger percentage than RLC, than the regional council. But when I look at the numbers, I'm not quite so sure. So we've already provided a $750,000 grant, and you're suggesting a $3,580,000 grant, and is $3,580,000? Yeah. So is that on top of the 750,000 or inclusive of the 750,000?
That would be, councillor, that would be in addition to, and that would bring those figures to represent the graph you see on your right.
So can you tell me what those figures are for the two boxes on the right? Because earlier on, you say that Rotorua Lakes is providing a $3.53 million. So it doesn't add up for me. So
councillor, you're exactly right. Allow me to explain. So the sum of those two numbers is roughly $4.3 million. And what I've got indications from my council, and appreciating that we haven't had our formal decision-making process, there appears to be strong support to match the regional council's funding. So I would be advocating to my council to raise our funding levels to match that, so that the result would be that Rotorua Lakes Council would also put in further funds to match what the regional council puts.
And the key there is...
Sorry, but then it would be a 50-50 and the boxes would be the same size.
That's correct.
Don't understand why you've got it the other way around. Or you've got a much larger box for RLC and that large one in the second one. If you just go to it.
Yes, as mentioned, because we would be seeking through our annual plan deliberations and then decision as well to increase our funding in addition, as the Chief Executive has said. So the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve is ensuring that not only you, but also us are doing everything that we can to ensure that the Tarawera residents will have the request that they've had of as close as possible to the 36,700. So we will be providing the opportunity for our council to also consider additional funding.
So are you suggesting that the boxes will be at equal size?
Yeah. Councillor, can I explain the numbers behind that in slightly more detail? So obviously there's an element of delivery contingency that we need to build in to make sure that we absolutely deliver a fixed cost to residents. The way that's drawn, that delivery risk sits with us. And so that number looks bigger in the RLC box because we would absorb any of that risk. So ultimately it would be a maximum of 50% from Bay Plenty Regional Council, but in all likelihood, if there is any additional cost, RLC would absorb that. So we would take the delivery risk.
Thank you for explaining that.
Councillor White.
Tēnā koe te marekura, Tania, me korua hoki te tūmuaki, kei te mihi atu kia korua mō korua whakaaturanga kia mātou. Very apologies that I'm not there in person. I've still got this dog tag around my neck and hopefully it'll be off tomorrow. Otherwise I would have been there. But I wanted to open by supporting the comments of Councillor, my colleague Lyle Thurston. I do appreciate and really appreciate the fact that you've come here and you've fronted up and started what I would hope is an ongoing collaboration that's warm, inviting, and productive. And we've got a bit of a journey still ahead of us, but I'm very supportive of this. One of the things that I wanted to ask, even in terms of the previous presentations, is what is the iwi involvement? And we've got the Te Arawa Lakes Trust that have a treaty settlement arrangement, and obviously expectations in that space. And of course, Te Arawa in particular have a large land holding around all of these lakes, notwithstanding the ownership of the lake bed and a co-management of the lakes. So they're a very important third leg or leg of the stool. So what level of I guess cooperation or consultation have you had with them so far?
Thank you very much, Te Taru. Actually, there were some delays recently as we went through the Environment Court. What the findings of that was that there has been a very significant consultation and certainly adequate from the Rotorua Lakes Council. But in particular, I do want to acknowledge Te Arawa Lakes Trust. They are the owners of 14 of our lake beds in Rotorua, and we do, through our joint committee with them in the Regional Council, have ongoing discussions. I know it has come to the Te Arawa Lakes Strategy Group as well on whether or not Lake Tarawera could be included as a deed-funded lake. Unfortunately, that decision was out of our hands. That was part of the settlement process and the financing that came from central government in the past as well. So I do assure you that we do continue to have a relationship moving forward, but I do know that in particular from an iwi perspective, they also wanted to know why it was not a deed-funded. Could it be a deed-funded? And to be quite honest, I think we're very, very lucky that Ministry for Environment did come to the table with a $6.5 million grant, which was a result of our Lake Tarawera Ratepayers Association's efforts as well.
Okay. Kia ora korua. Ngā mihi kia korua, kia kaha mo o koutou mahi. Kia ora.
Councillor Winters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Your Worship, Andrew, your staff and councillors. Thank you for coming through. Can I concur with my colleagues Te Taru and Lyle and his comments as well in terms of how we three Rotorua councillors work in this forum? Yeah, we do punch above our weight, but we're only 3 of 14 around this table. Your Worship, I just want to clarify, Councillor Nees clarified some of the numbers, but in your annual plan, you've got 3 options for Tarawera: 0 from ratepayers, 1 million, and the third option was $4 million. So is that the same 4 million you're seeking from us, or is that additional? And is it 4 million over 10 years, or is it 4 million per year? I'm just not sure. Can you clarify that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Winters. So we have 3 options in the annual plan that represent 3 principal approaches. One is the status quo, 0. One is $4 million, which at the time was intended to reflect getting to 50-50 split. But as costs have changed, that now no longer reflects that concept. And then there's a midway option of $1 million. To answer your second question, don't worry, it's a grant, but it's only once. So if it is a grant of 3.5 million, it wouldn't be every year. It would be a one-off grant towards this as a capital investment towards the project. That would get us to the 50-50 split between residents and
your
public.
Option of 4 million that you're going to charge your Rotorua ratepayers of $11 per household, is that over 4 million over 10 years, or is it 40 million over 10 years that you'll be seeking?
Council, it's a $4 million loan that's repaid over 25 years. Right. So it's only $4 million.
Right. Okay. So that I'm just unsure about that. So my concern is, Mr. Chairman, I'm just not, I think we need a bit more detailed discussion on this to clarify some of the numbers, because like Councillor Nees, I was a bit confused with some of your arithmetic, and that's so I'll leave it at that, but let's continue talking.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, I'll just make some closing comments, Your Worship. So the idea or the principal concept of a Lake Tarawera sewage scheme commenced in 2012. We're now 2025. The capital work started in 24. This is not a criticism of ARC. This is a concern that all local government entities should have in terms of the speed of delivery of some of these capital projects. As you well know, the value of money back in 2012 to what it is today, there's probably an inflation component somewhere between 40 and 50%. And it is ultimately ratepayers who stand in the market for that bill. Your Worship, as you know, and Andrew, the relationship between our CE and yourselves, I think, is very productive. It's positive, as is the government relationship, Your Worship. This is a public forum, and as you know, we are not going to resolve differences at this forum. I'm encouraged by the approach that you have agreed with the Chief Executive, that we would have a joint governance, Chief Executive to Chief Executive forum where we can work through these issues. Because as I said, 2012 is a long time, and this project won't be finished in the calendar year 25. So I would encourage you to do that. You've heard the comment from our councillors in terms of the appetite to have this discussion. And we will clearly take it offline. I hope that forum is put together sooner rather than later. And yes, thank you very much for your time today and coming, presenting to us. And there's one issue that could I ask you when we have our next forum that you are more clear on. Your suggestion in terms of the regional council making you a grant is that that should be recovered by a regional council rate. It's not clear whether that rate should be attributed to the general rate or whether it should be a targeted rate to Rotorua Lake residents or Rotorua constituents. The issue therein lies that this regional council in the last annual plan has decided, in the interests of the wider Rotorua community and the lakes, that they would, over a 3-year period, reduce the lake enhancement rate and transfer those funds that were normally collected through that vehicle to be collected through the general rate. And I just ask you to consider what your suggestion here in your presentation, that we collect the rate for this particular purpose. We have to be concerned as the Bay of Plenty Regional Council about whether or not that contravenes, or we could be acting ultra vires in terms of our rating scenarios. So thank you very much for your presentation. I look forward, and as does the combined council here, to the next hui that we're likely to have to try and put this to bed for once and for all. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and we do appreciate your time today. I do note that if there is any confusion, I think that's exactly why this has been valuable today. We want to make sure that we're not making guesswork, because our community do deserve a choice and a decision from us, and we do also ask for consultation as well. So we look forward to meeting with you again. Thank you.
Thank you. So councillors, agenda item number 9, minutes to be confirmed, Regional Council minutes the 27th of March. I'll move they be a correct record. Seconded, Councillor Winters. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Any matters arising? Councillor Winters.
Yeah, just on the top of page 17, we were talking about, what's the item there? Oh, top of page 17. Anyway, we've got their response to question presenters, climate change on the end of 2022, 2200. I don't think we've projected out that far, Mr. Chairman. I think it should be 2050, correct me wrong, for that, our climate change predictions. I just can't see me crystal ball gazing out that far. And also at the bottom of page 17, Mr. Chairman, we had that resolution regarding the strategy for the Ohau Channel diversion wall, and we said report back to council on engagement by August 2025. Can I get a progress update, Mr. Chairman, on the the reporting, the engagement with the technical advisory panel, tangata whenua, and are we on track August 2025 for a solution? Because I'm just concerned we've gone on for 6 weeks since this was voted on, and I just need a progress report, Mr. Chairman, from our CEO to say we're on track.
Well, quickly, Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you and good morning. I met with Tiara Lakes on Monday and also talked to Tiara Lakes on Friday. So we're on track in terms of determining the appropriate engagement through Tiara Lakes Trust. There is a technical working group meeting on the 12th of May, and
Thank you.
they will receive that Tonkin and Taylor report, which was independently peer reviewed.
Sorry, that Tonkin and Taylor or the WSP?
I'm mixing up my consultants, WSP, you're
Right.
quite right. And so that will be, I can update you further following that meeting next Thursday.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Next agenda item is Chairperson's Report 10.1. I'll move the adoption of that with one alteration. 1st of April, Radio 1XX interview. I didn't actually cover issues around the boat harbour. It was essentially about the annual plan process. Thank you, Councillor Nees, moved. Councillor Cap, thank you very much. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. We'll adjourn for morning tea. We'll reconvene at 10:50. Right, thank you, councillors. Let's reconvene. So 10.2 Quayside Group Draft Statement of Intent, 25-26, Kamaran.
Chair and councillors, this report is essentially presenting to you Quayside Group and Toimana Trust statements of intent in draft form for your feedback, and that's in response to the two statements of expectations that you've issued in December last year and March this year following adoption of the divestment parameters. That's in response to the adoption of your divestment parameters that you adopted in February, that you mentioned in February. And this report is seeking your direction in relation to the draft statements of intent and providing feedback on that and your direction on that feedback. Following receipt of your feedback, Quayside is then required under legislation to provide council with a final statement of intent in July this year. But the structure of the report is set out predominantly under section 2, where it's covering off the various elements of the statements of intent for your consideration, and under each element, draft feedback that is reflected in the attached feedback letter for your consideration and direction prior to finalization and submission to Quayside for consideration.
Kamara. Councillors. I just ask councillors to note the brief for Toimana Trust. Essentially, just return on the nominal capital that was contributed. Any other questions, councillor?
Thank you. I have a number of questions, number of issues, and generally I agree with the feedback that you've got in your letter. But I have a couple of other concerns. Firstly, it doesn't really pick up the tax position, the matter that we raised in our second statement of intent, that whatever we do with regard to transition, if we sell, if Quayside sells for shares, that we need to look at the tax position, the overall group tax position. So I hope that really comes out particularly strongly in the letter. I am concerned about the proposal that Quayside's making, that the investment target is only on equity investments, not on strategic assets or on the board power. And I think at the very least we need to have an investment target for both of those things. I've been here long enough to remember when Quayside's target was 8% return on the whole total portfolio. At that time, the investment portfolio was only 53 million, and we didn't have strategic assets, and didn't have we did have Port Town side of it. But uncertain about the proposal, limiting it only to investments at a 5% return plus CPI, because I don't necessarily believe that what the CPI is doing is reflective of what actually returns happening in the market. There are other drivers in the market for investment returns other than CPI. So I asked myself, why is that in there? Is it because they think that we're going to need more money if inflation goes up because our activities cost more? So I think there needs to be some more work and more thinking around those investment targets. At least don't split them up like that. We need to be very clear on what the target is for all of them. And I'm no fan of adding CPI. I'd rather have that 7% or something like that over the investments. Also, with regard to the strategic assets, who decides and how is it decided what becomes a strategic asset? Is that a decision of the Quayside board? If they go considering a purchase and they decide that, oh, we're going to call this a strategic asset, so we don't have to deliver a return on this, that's assumed to stay with what we've got. Is that something the council would have to agree with? Or is that a decision that only they can make? I think we're a little bit unclear about that. One very minor point, I believe, is that they talk about regular reporting back to council, regular meeting presentations to council. I think we should have a frequency, whether it's every 2 months, whether it's quarterly, because this next period is going to be a lot happening, and I think we need to have quite frequent touch points with Quayside. So I would be in favour of adding in a frequency and thinking carefully about how frequently we want to be discussing matters with Quayside, governance, as opposed to perhaps only sort of receiving a presentation when it suits, or so that's another point that I think we should consider. Also, there's notes in their post in their letter that they are going to be developing a transition plan, that they have done work on the site road, that they are going to be doing work on a distribution policy. But I think we need to know when that work's going to come to light, when we can expect to see it. And at the moment, they're saying we're doing it, but we've got no certainty about, one, our involvement, although that's good, and two, when we're going to see it. For myself, I'd rather know the transition plan sooner rather than later. And also the issue that the chair raised about the Tui-Moana fund only providing a dividend on the nominal amount of 70 million, which means it's a flat 3.5 million per annum. So say they do really well with their investments and it grows to 80 million, for example, we'll still only be getting 3.5 million? Or should we, like most other investments, get the return on whatever the capital value of the fund has grown to? And that's another issue for me. I'm not particularly comfortable that it's always pegged back to the original 70 million, because it's quite out of line with how you normally operate with invested funds. So that's just my feedback, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Neves. Could I prompt Councillor Crosby? Because essentially they target whatever you put in, whether it's 5 or 7, is really a reflection of the portfolio that you invest in. So if you're going to go conservative, you might have balance, but you go to aggressive. I mean, we don't want to get involved in that as a council, but essentially, is that a reflection of
the level?
Yeah,
it's a level of risk, and you're quite right. I think Councillor Neves raised a valid point around they could just make a number, 7, 8, whatever. What they are actually doing was also having a benchmark portfolio, which came out of the strategic planning day. So that's basically an electronic, I don't want to get into the detail, but they have and it was spoken about at the last update. So they have a benchmark portfolio that we're measuring our own investments against, and that number of 5 fell out of that, and the inflation adjusted. What they're trying to do is to make sure that the value of the capital is retained and not eaten away over years by inflation. And in my personal opinion, it should be the same for Tui-Moana. Otherwise, you're actually going backwards in terms of what you could buy for that 70 million, say 3 years ago today and in 3 years' time. The only other aspect that I comment on is that if you're going to want the benefits of a higher performance, you have to take the negative of a lower performance, because at the moment, Quayside will guarantee that, in Tui-Moana's case, Quayside guarantees that that dividend, whether it's high or low. So it's, you can't have it both ways. Basically, you can take the risk of it higher. I think the board would look at that, but you also have to take the risk if it performs below because of economic conditions. So yes, ultimately it's all around risk, and I think somewhere in here, Kamaran, is that we always talk about the level of risk that the shareholder and Quayside is prepared to take. That's really important, particularly in today's climate.
Any other questions for Kamaran? Councillor Villan, then Von Duddleston.
Just in relation to what Councillor Nee said about the strategic assets not having a return, my understanding is that they have to have a return as well. It's not regional benefit at zero return. The idea is that so I'm just sort of querying what you were saying there. Sorry.
They haven't set a target for it.
Right.
What I'm saying is they should be driving for a return, but they are not setting any targets. And I think it's the same for the Port of Tauranga. Port of Tauranga actually has performed extremely well for us over the years, and I do not understand why they haven't considered putting a target for that as well.
Is that because of time frames? So like Ranguru, for example, because there's a lag with strategic asset development before you get the return. Is that why they haven't set targets for that, or?
We haven't sought a response from Quayside on why that's not specifically outlined in the statement of intent. But that's something we'd hope to get an answer on through the letter process.
I think, Councillor McMillan, if you look at the other example, which is the Tauriko land holding, return on that is not monetised at all. Okay, so that's one example. In terms of the port, Quayside don't determine what the annual budget is going to be at the port. That's across me.
Just adding to that, I think it was presented at the last meeting. If you look at Quayside's own investments, it does actually have various classes of investments that the SIPO is made up of. And in there now is a benchmark number and a performance number. What our expectation is of that, all the investments do have a threshold or a target, except the port.
Yeah, Councillor Duddleston.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as we have agreed to sell down of some of the port, that the port it remains a strategic asset, whatever our holding is left. But at the same time, I think that's up to us, not Quayside, as to the return that gives us, because we're requiring them to hold at least 28% and hopefully a bit more. On that note there, the strategic assets, and they put down the Ranguru Business Park and benefit for the region. Well, the Ranguru Business Park, to get it to fruition, was a strategic asset. But actually, now that it's actually progressing, I think it falls out of the strategic asset. I don't think it matters whether we own through our CCO, Ranguru Business Park. The main thing was to get it up and running so that it will benefit the region. And that's been achieved. So I see that as shouldn't be classed as a strategic asset. When we look at the targets, because it's still in a development phase, that will have a specific case for return or no return even. That's fine, because it's a development tool. But we actually, I think we're getting it wrong by calling it a strategic asset, because now that it's actually underway, we've achieved the strategic side of what we were wanting to achieve. And you remember when we did set that up, it was at a time when the Port of Tauranga would have been tainted if we were the developer. The tax law changed, and so we were able to become the developer. But as I've said all along, that has implied a lot of extra risk, and so the return that we should expect should be higher because of the risk factor involved. So taking our projections out because calling it a strategic partner, in my view, would be a mistake.
Thank you.
I think first of all, strategic, I think using the same word for different purposes is not helpful, and it might be special purpose holdings. Tauriko is a classic example. It's just been held until the NZTA wants it, and then you just talked about the park. In terms of the returns, a 7% historic return on managed funds is agreed is generally agreed as a reliable result over time. Allowing but it should be on the uplifted amount, and that allows for any decrease because you've got that 2% buffer which hold on to that. So I think that gives certainty to us as the regional council, and also to Quayside, allowing them to budget and operate. It's obviously we have an opportunity at every new statement of intent to reset if there are some exceptionally great years, and I might reflect on if there's some exceptionally poor years. So I'm more than happy with that 5% CPI. I think it's a responsible number on average. It will work, and in the years that it doesn't work, it'll be by the years it works very well. And the final point is I get a wee bit concerned in this them and us stuff. They are us, to call a phrase. So we have to really make sure that our culture is one of where we working together with the same ultimate aim to benefit our ratepayers in the community. So I would like that to be reflected in our feedback.
Rob, Kamara, can you, on page, or under 2.4 on page 37, you're talking about draft feedback in terms of having a discussion about principles behind such thing as intergenerational equity. You want some more feedback. Is that from us, or is it from trying to draw out a Quayside what they mean?
That's setting up the discussion platform for the future as we progress through the policy review process for Quayside to present to council and have that discussion around those principles and seek council's perspective on that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, councillors? Otherwise, I'll move the recommendation on page 31. Directs Chief Executive to give feedback, draft statement to Quayside Group, incorporating the direction of the meeting. We've heard Councillor Neese's views, we heard Councillor Scott's views as well. Happy? Yep. Seconder? Councillor Campbell, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. 10.3.
Morning, Chairman and Councillors. So this is a procedural matter that's been requested by Quayside because of some changes they've made to their internal delegations. It's a requirement for a shareholder approval for a change in constitution for Quayside. So the matter is clear in their letter from Quayside of what they're requesting. So nothing to add to the report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Happy to move, Councillor McMullen. Councillor Winter, second. All those in favour, please
Can
say.
I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Be quick. Yes.
So, Matt, when they talk about signing deeds, is there a dollar value, or is it any deed, no matter the value? The dollar value would be relevant to their delegations policy that Quayside has. So the process that's undertaken by Quayside, like it is for staff of the regional council, has a financial delegation, and that's where the dollar value would come. So the deed itself could be a small deed or a big deed, but the delegation policy of Quayside would determine how that process has to be run out. So there is no dollar value attached because it could be a 1-year deed or a 10-year deed. So the value could be large or small.
So these.
Oh, thank you. I understand the rationale for this, and that previously, it's, resulted in delays for getting a signed signature on the deed if you needed two, directors to sign. But I have a question for you. It's really about, are you comfortable with this proposal? Because, generally, in the Companies Act, there is a requirement for two signatories, and that's all around risk and fraud, and the risk of risk and fraud. So in your position as our CFO, you're quite comfortable that there is no additional risk that this council will face by only having one government signatory for deeds?
Yes, I'm quite comfortable. I think the financial delegations that I was referring to, that in Councillor Winter's question, that would protect the organisation against the process that Quayside would follow to undertake to then finally get to a position of allowing a director to sign. So the Companies Act sets the two directors unless the Constitution allows it. So Quayside has gone through the process, had a legal review, and determined that to expedite deeds when things could be held up, one director would be sufficient. So I'm comfortable that they've gone through the right process to determine that, and that they would have the right delegations in place within Quayside to make sure that they're protected against fraud, as we are as an organisation.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Navigation safety bylaws, Tony Briggs and John Peters.
Oh, there he is.
Good morning, councillors. I'm going to take the paper as read. So at this stage, staff are recommending that we undertake consultation on two navigational safety matters that have come to light since we adopted the new bylaws last year. The new bylaws have not been enforced yet. We are still waiting for the Ministry of Transport to sign off our new infringement regulations, but we are hoping that at this stage that those will be adopted before the next summer season in 2024. Alongside that, we are going to undertake consultation on two matters that have become quite risky. So we want to undertake those changes as a separate process and get those changes into the bylaws as soon as possible. One is the extension of the Astrolabe Reef exclusion zone at the mouth of the Tauranga Harbour. We have found in the past that ships have started trying to sneak between the exclusion zone and Motiti Island. This represents a huge risk to the area. So we are working with Maritime New Zealand and shipping agents and the port to get that installed as soon as we can. That would be very limited stakeholder engagement with those particular entities, though it is indicated so far that they are all very supportive of that. The other is will be held at the same time is the engagement with recreational fishers and passive recreational vessel users in the Tauranga Harbour, particularly in our shipping passages. At the moment, the whole area within the shipping passages is a restricted anchorage for any small vessel. What we want to engage on is making those passages prohibited anchorages. The number of incidents between recreational vessels and large over 500 gross tonnes ships has increased over 100% in 2 years. So we're talking numbers of from 40 to 80 incidences in the last 2 years. Most of those have been, so 50% of those, the ship themselves or the pilot has had to take the evasive action. Only 8% of those were because of a recreational vessel breakdown. So that indicates to us that it is A, happening more often, and B, people are not wanting to give up their big fish in the channel just to avoid being hit by a large ship. So we want to change that fairly quickly before a real accident occurs. And so that will be done, the consultation will be done over this winter. The formal consultation, which we'll have to undertake for this process because it affects quite a large stakeholder group, it will all be run in tandem with the annual plan process for next year. So we anticipate consultation occurring late this year and formal consultation and hearings being in tandem with the annual plan. Any questions?
Thank you, Tony. Only comment would be that Astrolabe Reef and anchoring in the channel, why would you do too much consultation? Just do it. Because you're right, having been on the bridge of the sister ship, Ovation of the Sea, when you're on the bridge, you can't even see any of that stuff really close. I mean, John, you know this, but I would think if it's a health and safety issue, you just got to do it. Be a bit exact. I know you've got to do the consultation. Councillor Winters, and then John Douglas.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, this sheet sends shudders up my spine. I'm looking across the room at my colleague, Councillor Crosby, when he got the phone call that Rena bumped into the Astrolabe. And the anxiety, the stress for the whole community. Surely this council can make a decision today, or John can make a decision under your delegated powers to do an interim decision now to stop these boats taking a shortcut and to stop these boats anchoring in front of large vessels. Can't we do something? Yeah, we're going to go out for consultation. Hell's teeth. I don't want another Rena on our doorstep when we have some powers through the Maritime Transport Act, through our harbour master, to say, not going to happen. You do not shortcut inside Astrolabe ever again, and the penalties will be XXX. Can't we do something today, Mr. Chairman? Because I don't want to be sitting here when you get a knock on the door, Mr. Leader. Hello, we've got another Rena. I'm sorry, this has just gone on for too long. And I think we need to take the bull by the horns and say, no, not going to happen. Under our watch, this is never going to happen again. And if we can't do it today, what the hell can we do in the interim to stop these boats shortcutting and anchoring in a major port? I mean, goodness gracious, surely we've got some powers under the Maritime Transport Act and or to work with John to give him some delegated authority. Messages, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not happy that it's going to take the time to get this enacted, because that's not good enough. In this day and age, that's not good enough.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Just before you answer, John, I think there's two issues with the Astrolabe. One is ships passing through in transit, and the other one is, I don't know the answer to this, but when you fly into Tauranga, frequently you will see ships waiting at anchor to come in. Is that included or is that exempted?
Chair, there are two different issues here. So vessels transiting the passage which we want to cut off is different. Anchoring, vessels have got designated anchorages which I have put in place. We chose those based on the depth and various technical issues. So that is different. Our biggest risk is the shortcut, so to speak. But to answer Councillor Winters, Tony can tell you the different ways we could implement it. A lot of it is to do with, how to put this correctly, the Director of Maritime New Zealand's dislike of how Master is exercising their directions. I will to you all the technical details.
So through you, Chair, we have been in negotiations with Maritime New Zealand on this matter, and they would like us to put forward a proposal on 3 options in which to address this. Our preference was to put in a harbour master direction, which could be done ASAP without any consultation. So it's a direction in which the legislation allows us to do. However, MNZ are extremely reluctant to allow John to do that. The director has a number of issues with harbour master directions, which I won't go into now, but basically the advice we got from Maritime New Zealand is that we couldn't even extend the exclusion zone without going to the International Maritime Organisation, which is a 6-year process. However, we have decided not to take that advice and are undertaking this process that we are suggesting. Because it's a limited stakeholder group, and pretty much they're all supportive of this, that particular one won't have a lot of consultation. We won't do formal consultation. We've engaged with the shipping agents already. We have engaged with the port already. So this will be something that is just, we need to liaise with MNZ and Land Information New Zealand, which update the navigational charts, and it can be done, I would say, within a couple of months. It's the prohibition of the anchoring that has a wider audience, so therefore we must use an LGA process.
Okay. Councillor
So I respect Tony's
Thurston, Von
answers.
Doddleson, and then these, McMillan.
Yeah, I totally support all of the recommendations. My question was around the doubling over 2 years in these small boats anchoring in the shipping channel. I'm interested to know, in your opinion, or whether any analysis has been done on that, whether it's an increasing level of ignorance of risk, or whether it's population growth and more people buying vessels without any awareness of navigational etiquette or risk, or a bit of both. And then depending on what your answer to that is, what can be done? Obviously we've got this rule, so that mitigates that, but there are other issues out at sea besides that, you know, people, if there is a increasing level of ignorance or an increasing population of uneducated boaties, that do we need to ramp up our education? And yeah, what's the bigger picture there with that?
The Chair, Councillor, to answer the first question, there's probably an increase in number of boats in the water, which probably came around after the COVID, I believe. So that's one factor. The other thing is that the port has also increased its activity from the past. We have more ships coming in, so more interaction. We have been pretty big on comms about this, but it doesn't seem to get through to certain people. And you'll always have these. Ideally, I'd like to be like Australia, where every boat needs to have a minimum day skipper ticket, but that's much above my pay grade. That's for the minister to decide, which will probably never happen. But there are a lot of stakeholders who believe in that, and I wish we could contribute to that push to the government to make it a national requirement. It's a simple day skipper's cost $200, and you can do it online, and then you get the basic education.
Thank you.
Councillor Thurston.
2 questions. Maritime New Zealand, if we were to force a quick decision here today, Tony, what penalty are they going to inflict this panels apart from cutting off our water?
I think they would make John's life hell, to be fair. I think they would be very disappointed. There's no actual monetary penalties. There's no legislative penalty that they could impose, but they do, they are the holders of the regulation, so we do have to go through them for a number of things. I think, so what I'm anticipating doing for this is writing them a memo with our options that we've considered and our the avenue that we have decided to take and leaving it at that.
Supplementary, John, in terms of process, just to an absolute ignorant layperson, when this comes in, how is it communicated to foreign captains that, sorry guys, no more shortcuts between Motiti and, how is it communicated to them?
Through the chair. So first of all, the moment we get approval, the nautical charts are updated by LINS. So the captains base their passage planning on that. And we will be talking to the Association of Ship Agents, who will then propagate that to the ships. Whenever a ship comes in there, they ask for information and it all goes through to them. So that's the best way. On another note, I was thinking about how we could fast track it, if you like. If our chief executive could talk to maybe the chief executives association, I understand it's called, of which Nigel is your representative. They put some pressure on MNZ to address this issue faster than normal.
Thanks, John. Councillor Bondaros.
Yeah, thank you. The three issues, the proposed astral exclusion and the shipping, the fishing exclusion in the harbour, both were consulted on under the NAV safety. So both of those were consulted on. So
so through you, Chair, these were brought to the committee after the consultation had occurred, and that's why we had to go through a separate process.
Okay, I'll take that on board. This process, the NAV safety bylaw review, took nearly 3 years to complete, and these are really both of those are really critical issues if we want to stop another RENA happening. So I don't think I think you're already consulting with Maritime. Put a time limit. Tell them, because of the urgency, that they've got 1 month to actually come back with an alternative solution if they don't like our solution. Don't give them 3 options. Say you come back with an alternative solution. You've got 1 month to come back with an alternative solution if you don't like ours, and we'll look at that. With regard to Hunters Creek, again, there was a unwillingness to engage by the local iwi out at Manukana and Ringway. So to put it on hold until that thing, to me, is a nonsense. This, again, they need a time, don't just say until they come back. Either we do it or we don't do nothing, and which means the status quo stays until the next vital review. And that's probably my preferred option, actually, because we've got so far down the track. We've been incredibly reasonable, and we've offered to go as a committee out to the islands to talk to the people, and that was not taken up. And to expect this full council to take over the responsibility for that, if you're going on with the third thing, I think is risky, because the amount of work that we did as a hearings group over that 3-year period was substantive, and so if you do want to continue it, I personally believe that the hearings group should stay and stay intact, and not, it shouldn't be a full council decision, because I think they just aren't getting, they don't have the background on the whole thing, and you could get a perverse outcome. So time is of the essence, is what I'm saying, and I think Maritime, the urgency ones are the ones with shipping safety, because wouldn't we look like bloody fools if we have another RENA in the next month? And we've been talking about it and doing nothing. And Maritime New Zealand have to understand that this is actually critical and there's real urgency. So, you know, 4 weeks is, in my view, is heaps.
Thank you, Councillor Nee. Shirley, then McDonald.
Thank you. I agree that these are both urgent matters, the Estrelab and the shipping channel. However, we did really get offside with the recreational fishers over the motor protection area. And so I think we've really got to talk seriously to the recreational fishers. We've got to do that really well. Otherwise they could feel that we're just not doing our job to consider their needs. The counter to that for me is that I don't think we should be waiting for the annual plan consultation to be going out and consulting on this. I think within the harbour stuff, we need to be talking really widely. We need to be talking to the fishing clubs and getting them to have open evenings for the members so that we can talk to them, so that we really have the opportunity to go out and say, look, this is a public safety issue and we could end up with a shipping disaster in our harbour if we don't do this. So we need you to understand why we think this is absolutely essential. But I guess my question to the staff is, how quickly could we do this? Could we spend a month intensively talking to the recreational fishers and then do a formal consultation, bearing in mind it's still only May, do a formal consultation, say in August, so that we make a decision before the end of our triennium, so that we're not waiting for the annual plan. Surely we could fast track it to sort of try and give us the opportunity, one, for this council, who are all on board with you, to make a decision, and two, that we try and mitigate the risk before the summer season when all of our fishers are out there.
Through you, Chair, we had anticipated some pre-engagement with the fishing clubs and undertaking that very shortly. I guess if we could take on board your suggestion of doing early consultation, because we could just bring that date forward to this year instead of waiting until the annual plan round. So we had already anticipated that we would start talking to fishing clubs and the wider audience around Tauranga anyway. So we could fast track that, certainly.
Councillor Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly support the recommendations, but I'm certainly leaning towards the comments of Councillor Winters on Adelsson. But this is a very serious matter, and it's been brought to our attention. And having been brought to our attention, it's a public health and safety issue. If we don't and demonstrate we seem to be actually taking action, we carry a certain liability. And to just sort of say, oh, we've got to consult on the annual plan and go through process. I mean, that's the problem with local government. The process is the product. The powers that exist, as I understand it, for the Harbour Master Order, and Maritime New Zealand don't like it because their culture is control and command and central position. They have an appalling track record as on a performance basis. And of course they don't like Harbour Masters showing initiative in the region. That takes away their power. And yes, they might try and make your life hell, but that just reflects how bad their culture is, if that's the response you get out of them. So, I'm inclined to think that we have to take some pretty firm action here, and we seem to be taking firm action within the law, but not just the process. This is important stuff, and I think if we do go back to the Maritime Zone, as another does, it has to be very firm. This is serious. This is why we're doing it. Do we have your support? Yes, no, and we want it quickly. That's sort of my feeling about it.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. So, John, you're getting the picture. This is a local issue. If you run into Kahul Tony, the chief executive, bringing the chief executive of Maritime New Zealand, essentially, as Ken said, putting them on notice is the right way to go. Councillor McDonald.
That's basically what I was going to do. We just, exactly what, Ken was saying, that's what I was going to say. Let's not sit and wait. I mean, we've gone through the arena and we can remind them of that. So we're not sitting here and waiting because we know the outcome and something happens.
So the resolution has been moved by Councillor Dan. Exclusion zone extension as the preferred option following targeted stakeholder engagement and being delivered by August 25. Pre-engagement commence immediately and that on the consultation on the proposed prohibited interest of how I should place as soon as possible. That would be number 6.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just wonder if that could be, if the CE can also be a signatory to that as well.
Sorry, so who's the signatory?
The CEO, going to be responded to.
Yes, through, absolutely, I will work with opportunities with Maritime New Zealand. So what I'm proposing is that there is an amendment to recommendation 4, and that be replaced with 2 recommendations. One, as you discussed, in terms of seeking harbour master direction for the proposed Australasia exclusion zone extension as the preferred option, following targeted stakeholder engagement and be implemented by August 2025, which is the timeframe we're talking about. The second one agrees pre-engagement commence immediately and that formal engagement on the proposed prohibited anchorage in Tauranga Harbour should remain preferred as soon as possible. So that replaces the existing recommendation 4.
You know, I just have to say one thing with this report. We've actually been put on notice here today. And for anyone to back down to the Maritime New Zealand, I'm sorry, we've got a lot of power too. And stand up to these guys and put them on notice, because if anything happened between now and August on the Astrolab, we're going to look really bloody dumb. I can tell you that now. And as far as I'm concerned, they've got to take some responsibility. I don't care who John and the staff are talking to. It could be somebody 3-4 points down the ladder. But this is a deadly, deadly serious situation. And if it, you know, it's just got to proceed. But even to wait till August is a bit of a taking a chance as far as I'm concerned. So, but yep, I'm happy with it. We just need to move this recommendation. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. And we'll see. Councillor.
I've just got one comment on the phraseology, and it's backing up really what Councillor Campbell was saying about in terms of the word seeking. I'm just wondering if we can be more directive, more. I haven't got a word in my head at the moment, but I don't know if we can direct, can we? Or require, implement something which is more seeking to do something. And then I have the second.
So Brosley, thank you. So just to be clear, we're running 2 slightly separate processes for the exclusion zone versus the anchoring. The exclusion zone is more critical.
Yes, that's correct. And the word seeking isn't included in the recommendation. So the first one agrees that harbour master direction be sought for the proposed Astrolabe exclusion zone extension as the preferred option. Agrees that the harbour master direction for the proposed Astrolabe exclusion zone be the preferred option. Following targeted stakeholder engagement can be implemented by August 2025. Staff have received it for 2 months. Second new recommendation is a different recommendation that does require extensive engagement with recreation officials. The
is to re-engagement with PCE in a formal consultation of positive input and Tauranga Harbour shall remain as a clear sentence. So that has been seconded, hasn't it? Yeah. At the Tauranga Moana advisory brief, you mentioned something about their through the Aspidad, they're not supposed to go there currently. So with this period between now and August, is there anything you can do to kind of provide that upfront? I don't know what the law states at the moment, but they're not meant to be going there, and they've started going there, but they're actually not meant to.
I mean, I don't want to unwind the conversation that you've just had.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
I think one of the options that we've been talking about is John putting a harbour master's direction in place. So that's the power that he has as an appointed harbour master rather than the council has. John can do that tomorrow. And so
till August, I'm just thinking something till August.
I think John's taking some comfort from the support around the table that if Maritime New Zealand do make his life hell, that you are behind him. And so I think we'll do, that's not a resolution for council to make, that's not his decision. But we will put that in place, or John will put that in place. Then we will carry on with the process around updating bylaw charts and the notice to shipping agents, etc. And I think we can do that by the August.
Great. Thank you, August. Awesome.
Councillors, we move.
So I just want comfort from our harbour master that you have our backing to do what you've got to do. And if you get heat from Maritime New Zealand, tell them to come and visit us and we'll send some good hitters. Because I just can't stand this, these shortcuts when life, limb, and another disaster is on the horizon. So do you have comfort that you've got resolution today to ensure that you have the full support of this council to take Maritime New Zealand?
Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Just note, councillors and John, that the anchoring in the channel is not just about vessels over the time. Because the protocol, from the court's point of view, is because of the risk factor, is pilotage or tuggage both in and out. So there's another 2 tons to escort these vehicles both in and out. So you're talking about 3 vessels, not one. Right, councillors, appointment of on-scene commander. Move. Councillor Campbell, second. I second. You second it, thank you. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Thurston, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Acting Chief Executive, move. Councillor Crosby. Second, Councillor John. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Involved by PG Regional Council Resident Survey.
Morning, councillors. Happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions.
Councillor McMillan, Crosby, Thurston, the second.
I did. I am having to move. I just had a question as well, and I'm just trying to catch up with my notes now. It's around this surveying, and it's just a future question really, so it's not actually nothing to do with this report, but just wondering whether that could evolve into participatory democracy type work down the track, because it seems on the cusp of of that. And it will just take a couple more steps, and albeit it's not an albeit hybrid participatory democracy, but it could be a really valuable democratic tool if it took a couple more steps.
I very much agree with you. And I can see down the track that we could use the database to tap into more focus groups or, you know, more face-to-face or different sorts of engagement. Always keen on participatory democracy. We just need the right topic and questions to be asking about and the right decisions that we need to make. We'll align it, but very, very keen on that when it makes sense. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Angus. I agree. We just need to make sure that we can compare survey to survey, otherwise it becomes useless. It's quite often that a survey then will change it, change this and change that, so you can't follow a trend.
Very much agree with you. We're in the process of drafting the questions and we're reducing it. We're very conscious of survey length because the initial one is close to 20 minutes and that's just far too long. I'd like to keep it closer to 5 minutes. But we're mapping the questions over. So taking the most valuable questions that we need answers on and keeping them. We'll just have to be transparent around our methodology that is shifting. But we'll keep it as consistent as we can.
Mr. Scott?
That's a good question about the budget. I noticed you say that they're confident to deliver it with an existing budget. You mentioned something about fine tuning. So I'm just wondering what the fine tuning might be.
My anticipation, it's a piece of string with how we advertise this. You don't know how wide, what your kind of conversion funnel is going to be. How much do we need to spend on digital advertising to get people to complete the survey? I'm confident it'll be less than what we've been spending, but my hope is that over time you build that database and you can reduce your amount of advertising spend you need per survey to get that number of responses, so it would taper off over time. That's my hypothesis. You never know how these things go. It's a bit of a numbers game. Yeah.
Thank you. I support this and congratulate you to be using technology to change and adapt so that we can be on top of what people are thinking. How do we, through this, ensure that we are touching base with a representative group of people, particularly if we anonymise the data? Because, you know, there could be manipulation from people. If it's whoever wants to come in and answer the survey, there could be some sort of manipulation of people sort of getting all their brothers and friends to submit. So how will we cover that so that we know that what we're hearing is representative of the community?
There's a few ways we're looking to combat that. It will be a self-selected survey, so that is different to the past methodology. However, I'm hoping with the advertising spend, we plan to incentivise it with, say, a giveaway, so you're getting a different audience to complete it. That worked quite well in the LTP pre-engagement when we used that. And we're going to have compulsory demographic questions so that we can better track. Without the demographic information, the information is a lot less rich and we just can't draw those insights. So that's one way we're planning to keep track.
So you can keep the data anonymous by not requesting a name, but you do, or not revealing the name to the staff analyst. But you're going to ensure that you do get that demographic data so that we can be assured that this is relatively representative, this survey.
Correct. I believe you can also track IP location for the person completing the survey. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. So you'll see if the person's not in the Bay of Plenty, for example.
Just a quick one. On the audience, you've got participation is encouraged from the Bay of Plenty residents over 18 years. Appreciate that's the voting age. And while I personally don't support lowering the voting age to 16, I think for a survey of this nature, we could have very valuable input from 16-year-olds, particularly using social media and the like. and 16-year-olds will soon be 18-year-olds. So why is it cut out at 18?
I think that's a really good point. We've just gone with voting age with residents and ratepayers, but I think we could do
Yeah,
that.
but they're not voting. It's their view, their impression, their feedback.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, I agree. I think we should do that.
I just wanted to congratulate staff on the use of social media. I mean, I use social media a lot, and I'm going to say use it more. I do use a lot of your social media to share to my page, and then I talk to my constituents on what we're putting through. So I'm totally supporting that as a medium and encouraging that you use it more. Because I think it actually uses it's helpful for a lot of us council around the table who use social media to communicate with our constituents. So yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you, and I very much agree. And when councillors share our content, it really helps extend our reach and get the message out there. So definitely love it when you do that.
Okay, councillor Mullen, please move. Councillor McDonald, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. We go through to financial performance. Mara and AJ. So before you sit down, Chris, for you, in terms of the revenue, you make a comment here about revenue being $9 million on budget. Is that a reflection of transfer of the incentives fund from MEP to RLC? It is. So that was $10 million. So if you net that off against the other financial performance, very good reflection.
Good morning, councillors. Yes, there's other incentives also includes like the Wallaby program fund, and then obviously there's a reduction in total revenue regarding the subsidy for the PP projects that was underfunded in LTV. So 9 million is the net of all of those variations.
Good. Questions come up, or any presentation from Mara? Sorry to beat the gun, but
I'll just do a quick overview and then leave it for you to councillors to ask some questions. Operating revenue variance has just been covered. So essentially, councillors, you have in front of you the 9-month financial performance report for year-to-date performance up to the end of March, and also a full year forecast in terms of what council anticipates to achieve at the end of this financial year, along with key variances and the drivers, or explaining the drivers for those key variances. In terms of operating expenditure, forecast expenditure is expected to be around 200 million, which is just 0.9 million under budget. Main drivers for that is contract work savings, delays in transport projects, and unfunded NLTP projects, which is correlating to some extent on the operating revenue variance. These underspends are offset by some increased contractor spend in biosecurity as it relates to the Wallaby project. Capital revenue is forecast at 7.9 million and tracking close to budget at this point in time. Capital expenditure is forecast at 26 million compared to a revised annual budget of 35 million. And that's depending on how the months progress in terms of capital spend between now and end of the year. There may be a capital carry forward request being brought to council later this year for consideration and approval. The current variance is primarily due to delays in the stakeholder consultation, completion of cost-benefit assessments for flood protection projects, catchment planning, and infrastructure improvement initiatives. Having said that, the 26 million forecast as it compares to year one of the long-term plan budget is pretty close to 26 million versus 25.9 million in the long-term plan for year one. Treasury management is sitting at 310 million for external loans and 240 million for investments, with an average return on investments at just over 5% against council's weighted average cost of borrowing of 4.25%. So that's a summary of council's financial proposed order for this financial year.
Councillor Lees.
Just a question about the operating, the 10 million coming in from MUB to go to RLC. Does that go out of our balance sheet as well? So where's that reflected in the start date?
So that will be, you will see that the contract cost will be significantly overseen, which includes a part of that, but then also again, set off against other reductions like the PD contracts for the unfunded penalty projects.
Right, so is it in here already?
Councillor McMillan.
Maybe I should know the answer to this, but why were there the delays in the stakeholder consultation for the CapEx spend? This is
the delays in some of the, also relates to the Quayside Brisbane project. Delays with negotiations and that.
says specifically, it says consultation though.
One of the ones that has been taken longer than expected is no surprise. Councillor, first and next year was the Nongjaha project where we have been struggling to get equipment, particularly that we've been struggling so bypass. And we've just not getting the progress that we need to. Second, collaborative agreement that so there are problems there. However, on the positive side, the major projects so we're making good progress in some areas, not so much.
Yeah, so is that just the nature of the beast? So we've got this, you know, this is how much we think our CapEx, and then we guesstimate how long it's going to take to get an agreement, but that could be way out. Is there any way to mitigate that or fine tune that so that you've got a more accurate measure of what that's going to go through?
Well, there's not really a silver bullet because we have improved our systems and projection. We are very close to the target. So that's not a terrible deal. We have to, yes, there are always. It's current. So, but there are things we can do. Discuss another time. Go through the capital project. Lessons learned on each project by project.
Thank you.
Contractors and consultants, so that's a very broad range. And I wonder, did you say PT? PT?
Yeah, that's right.
So, well, I just want to say what a great news story there is there in PT and how well our staff are working on that. And I see all of this he might like to talk about it. But, you know, we've actually renegotiated our bus contracts locally and getting some really good wins. Like I'm talking in the six figures and with a monthly, sort of 50,000 a month. But Oliver, let's talk about it because I think.
That's one that was because it's in the confidential.
So.
Not yet. Councillor Brosby.
Just quickly, when is the credit rating review?
That's one in the next few weeks, a meeting with Standard & Poor's, and be able to give us an update on the current status of the rating.
What the percentage?
Right, any other questions? Not. I'll move to the signing of the financial report. Councillor Lees, seconded. All those in favour, say aye. Thanks, Terry. We go to Seconded, councillor Thurston, all those in favour say aye, against carried.